A cool mist lay thick over the Everglades that morning, wrapping the ancient cypress trees in a ghostly veil. Oliver Bates set off on his usual early walk along the winding trail, the soft buzz of nature his only friend since the loss of his wife 3 years ago. Today, however, a tiny, unexpected sound shattered the gentle quiet, a faint, jittery chirp coming from under a fallen palm frond. When Oliver knelt to take a closer look, his heart skipped a beat. Nestled in the damp leaves was a small, silver-furred animal with huge closed eyes and shallow breaths. And beside it lay another lifeless shape. In that split second, his familiar morning ritual spiraled into a mystery that would change everything. The fog clung to the cypress trunks like a secret, blurring the path ahead of Oliver, a retired high school biology teacher now 62. His early walks had become his lifeline, a way to escape the hollow silence of an empty home that still echoed with memories of Margaret, his wife who lost her battle with pancreatic cancer 3 years past. He recalled her gentle plea during those final hospital days, her soft voice urging, "Promise me you won't let this break you, Ollie," words that had haunted him ever since. Despite his daughter Sarah's insistence to move closer to family in Seattle, Oliver could never leave the place where every corner, the kitchen they once danced in, the garden she loved, the hallway marked with memories of Sarah's growing years, told the story of their life together. As he continued down the misty path, the heavy air and Florida's familiar warmth pressed around him, hinting that the day held secrets yet to be revealed. Adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses and wiping away the dew that gathered on them, Oliver's weathered hands moved with a practiced routine. Then, in the middle of his steady pace, a delicate, almost whispered sound stopped him cold. A weak chirp, layered over the usual chorus of birds and insects. He tilted his head, listening intently, and realized the sound came once again from beneath that palm frond. Memories of his classroom filled his mind. How often he told students that careful observation was the key to understanding nature. What he discovered next made his heart pound. A tiny creature, no larger than his thumb, lay tightly curled and covered in matted silvery fur, streaked with what might have been dried blood. Its face was dominated by enormous closed eyes and a strange, stretched membrane along its sides. Right beside it, another identical being lay completely still, and Oliver's throat tightened as he pieced it together. A mother and her baby, the mother already lost. In these moments, he felt her teasing spirit, reminding him of his knack for rescuing strays, like the time he turned the garage into a makeshift hospital for injured birds. The early days were filled with uncertainty, as Cookie refused food and water, prompting Oliver to set alarms through the night to check on the tiny creature. Desperate for answers, he called his old friend Dr. James Chun, a trusted veterinarian who had long helped with classroom pets. Even James was puzzled by the creature's odd features, suggesting it might be a kind of gliding mammal, a rare sight in Florida. But the good news was that its vital signs were slowly getting better, a small victory that kindled a spark of hope. Days melted into weeks as Oliver dedicated himself to nursing Cookie back to health. He experimented with different foods, berries, nuts, even insects, watching with satisfaction as the little animal began to show clear signs of improvement. "You poor little thing," he murmured, his voice soft as he carefully scooped up the fragile survivor with hands that had once nurtured injured birds and rescued classroom pets. And just like that, the day's quiet normalcy broke into something that felt both heart-wrenching and hopeful. Back home in his modest ranch near Naples, Oliver set about creating a safe haven for this mysterious creature, using an old aquarium from his teaching days. Lining it with soft cotton cloths and tucking a heating pad in one corner, he recalled every bit of advice on caring for small mammals. The little animal, which he soon learned to call Cookie, remained motionless through the entire trip, its shallow breaths gradually finding a steadier rhythm. "Let's see what we can learn about you," Oliver said aloud, his voice echoing in the empty house that had become his refuge since Margaret's passing. Its fur grew cleaner and softer by the day, and those once-shut eyes eventually fluttered open to reveal a deep amber glow that seemed to hold years of quiet wisdom. One late night, while poring over wildlife forums and conservation sites, Oliver finally uncovered a clue. Cookie's distinctive membrane, large eyes, and silvery coat pointed to one thing: a young southern flying squirrel, one of Florida's rare hidden treasures. One bright morning, as he watched the tiny creature gingerly pick up a pecan from a small bowl, Oliver grinned and whispered, "That's what I'll call you. Cookie, just like the treats Margaret used to bake." For the first time in years, genuine warmth filled his chest as he saw Cookie grow stronger. Little did he know that this fragile creature would soon become his steadfast companion in a journey filled with unexpected challenges. 6 months later, just as Cookie's health had taken a promising turn, a severe respiratory infection hit her hard. Sleepless nights turned into a blur as Oliver carefully monitored her laboured breaths, administering antibiotics prescribed by James. In the dead of night, as Cookie's breathing grew more troubled, Oliver found himself praying for the first time since Margaret's death, pleading silently, "Please, don't take her too." That same night, his daughter Sarah called with distressing news. A developer had purchased the land next door, planning to clear acres of the natural habitat, including the very area where Oliver had discovered Cookie. Sarah's voice trembled with concern as she suggested maybe it was time for Oliver to sell his house and join the family in Seattle. But as Oliver gazed at the enclosure where Cookie fought for every breath, a fierce determination welled up inside him. "No," he declared, firm as stone. "This is where we belong." And with that, his days turned into a flurry of research on local wildlife laws, community meetings, and rallies from old students and local leaders who believed in his cause. Oliver's resolve took on a new shape as he and Dr. James Chun, who despite his own struggles with lung cancer became his strongest ally, drafted a proposal to convert his property and the surrounding land into a wildlife sanctuary. They collected signatures, attended council meetings, and slowly built a coalition of support. The turning point came when Cookie, now much stronger, was moved to a screened porch where she could enjoy fresh air and natural sounds. One evening, as local news crews arrived to fill the segment on the proposed sanctuary, Cookie climbed to the highest point of her new home, spread her arms wide to reveal her fully developed patagium, and glided gracefully across the enclosure. The footage of her elegant flight captured the hearts of viewers, painting a vivid picture of the wildlife that might otherwise vanish. But even as victory neared, a bitter cost emerged. James passed away just 2 days before the city council voted in favour of protecting the land, leaving his last words echoing in Oliver's ears. "Promise me you'll build something wonderful here, old friend." The loss hit Oliver deeply, yet he found solace in the mission ahead. In the weeks following James's funeral, Cookie seemed to sense Oliver's sorrow, often perching on his shoulder as he drafted plans for the sanctuary. Slowly, with the help of former students, now local builders and conservationists, and his daughter Sarah's support, Oliver transformed his 5 acres into a safe haven for flying squirrels and other wildlife. The sanctuary became a living tribute to both Margaret and James, a place where memories and new beginnings intertwined. Sarah's children, Emma and Jack, added their own spark to the project, Emma with her keen eye for nocturnal creatures, and 7-year-old Jack spinning imaginative tales about Cookie's adventures. Every day, as the sanctuary grew, so did Oliver's hope that nature could mend broken hearts. Yet, life had one more harsh lesson to deliver. One autumn, a Category 3 hurricane barreled through Florida, threatening to undo everything Oliver had built. Despite Sarah's desperate pleas to evacuate, Oliver refused to leave, not when Cookie had just given birth in one of the sanctuary's nesting boxes. That night, the storm roared with a fury that seemed to shake the very bones of the land. Wind howled, branches were ripped away, and the rain battered the windows like pebbles thrown in anger. Oliver paced the house with a flashlight, listening to the creaks and cracks of a world in chaos. In one tense moment, a sudden movement caught his eye on the screen of his Florida room. Cookie, drenched and trembling, clung to the frame. Without a second thought, Oliver opened the door, letting in the blast of wind and rain, and watched in amazement as Cookie darted inside, a tiny soaked bundle clutched in her mouth. Over and over she braved the storm, each time returning with one more fragile baby. When the last little one was finally brought in, Cookie's strength was waning, and Oliver hurriedly set up a temporary nest in the laundry room with soft towels and a heating pad. As the storm raged outside, he sat in awe watching Cookie care for her babies, safe and unharmed. A scene that revealed the pure, raw power of a mother's love and the will to survive. The morning after the hurricane brought both ruin and resilience. Several old trees had fallen, and many nesting boxes were damaged. Yet most of the flying squirrels found refuge in sturdier parts of the sanctuary. The community's response was overwhelming. Neighbours from all over Naples gathered to help clean up and rebuild. Local businesses donated supplies, and even a wildlife organisation stepped in with extra funds to expand the project. Cookie's heroic efforts during the storm made headlines, and soon local news and social media buzzed with the story of the man who rescued a flying squirrel, only to have her save her own babies in a moment of sheer determination. Interviews, magazine features, and documentary crews began to show up at Oliver's door, each eager to capture the unlikely bond between a lonely man and a resilient creature. One day, a children's book author proposed a collaboration to tell Cookie's story, mixing gentle storytelling with lessons on conservation. A new way for Oliver to share his love for nature, much like his days in the classroom. Sarah watched these developments with mixed feelings. Pride for her father's achievements, yet worry that he might be taking on too much. One quiet evening, as they sat on the freshly rebuilt observation deck, Sarah asked softly, "Dad, are you sure you're not overdoing it?" Oliver smiled as he offered a pecan to Cookie, who glided over from a nearby tree to land gracefully on the railing. "Your mother used to say there's no end to finding your purpose," he replied, his voice full of gentle resolve. Cookie, now a little greyer and slower, but still bright-eyed, climbed onto his shoulder for her favourite perch, and for a moment, the weight of past sorrows lifted away. Their bond, built on years of loss and unexpected hope, had become the heart of the sanctuary, a living lesson in resilience and new beginnings. Over time, the sanctuary blossomed into much more than a refuge for flying squirrels. Oliver established an education centre where school groups could learn firsthand about wildlife conservation. With 2 full-time staff members, both former students, and the support of his daughter Sarah, the project grew into a community-driven movement. The children's books about Cookie became bestsellers, with every page echoing the message of hope and care for nature. Then, in an unexpected twist, the developer who had once threatened the land came forward with a proposal. Moved by the sanctuary's impact, he offered to donate 20 acres of adjoining land to expand the protected area. Standing at the edge of his property on the day the papers were signed, Oliver gazed out over the new expanse, where Cookie's great-grandchildren played among the trees. A gentle breeze carrying the familiar scent of magnolia blossoms, Margaret's favourite. In that quiet moment, Oliver closed his eyes, recalling her last words about endless love, and knew that love had not ended. It had transformed into a new purpose that reached far beyond loss. That night, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the first stars began to shimmer, Oliver sat in his favourite porch chair. Cookie, now sharing her living space with one of her daughters, moved slowly yet deliberately toward him. With eyes as bright as they had ever been, she accepted the pecan in his hand and settled onto his shoulder. Together, they watched the dark sky. 2 unlikely companions who had saved each other in ways they never imagined on that misty morning so many years ago. Their story, now a beacon of hope for others lost in their own fog, reminded everyone that sometimes the smallest creatures can spark the biggest changes, and that every tale of rescue is also a story of being rescued, with the promise of new beginnings just around the corner.